Hey everybody, welcome to the Black Sheep Props channel. I'm Steve and I'm here to teach you the tips, tools, techniques, and materials for building your very own super cool EVA foam props. Now here at Black Sheep Props, we like to slip in a very informative tips video in between each super cool foam prop build, which is exactly what this is. In this episode, Heat Gun Basics, we're going to take a basic look at this Scorching foam superstar, the heat gun. We're going to look at what it is, what it does, how it works, and the most common uses you will have for it on every single prop you make. A 100% necessity, you gotta get one. You cannot build cool props without your heat gun. So, if you're ready to hit it, let's take a brief look at the heat source we use for making something. All right, there's our heat gun. This little monster is a scorching heat generating blow dryer. Basically, this end gets white hot. This thing is absolutely a skin eater, so be careful using this. But this is an absolute necessity for every single prop you're going to build. You use this for two main purposes. One is for sealing over your foam before you glue it and before you paint it. Turns your foam from a dry matte finish piece of foam to a nice, tight, smooth, shiny, beautiful piece of foam. And the second thing you use it for is you use this to heat up foam so you can shape the foam as well. Because after you shape foam with the heat gun, you let it cool off and it stays in the shape that you heated it to. So sealing your foam and heat shaping. So heat gun, definite must, gotta have one. Doesn't matter what brand you get, you just need it to be hot, and they all are. And this thing, like we mentioned before, you turn it on. This thing gradually gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Let's see if you can see it in here start to turn red. What'll happen is in here, it'll absolutely turn red. There you go, like a jet engine. Look at that. Man, that thing is HOT, baby. Look out for that. And you use it, you wave it back and forth on a piece of foam like a blow dryer, and it's also got a flat bottom on the end, so you can take it and you can stand it up and leave it running, and you can wave stuff over the top of it so you can use both your hands. So you can use it handheld like a blow dryer, or you can stand it up on its flat end, which is what it's designed for, so you can leave it there going and you can use both hands to move foam over the top of it. So, okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is heat sealing with your heat gun. And as you can tell, foam is dry and it's very porous and it's got a matte finish. It's not shiny at all. But as you go through the course of your builds, if you've been with us for any amount of time, you've seen that in every build we do, after we cut out 2 or 3 pieces that are all going to be stuck together, before we do any gluing, and especially way before the end stage where we do any painting, we will heat seal our foam before we glue it together. And the reason we do that is when you heat seal it, it sort of melts over the top layer of the foam and causes the open cell foam to shrink and tighten and gloss over, and you go from a dry matte finish piece of foam that's very soft, and it changes into a tight, shiny, stiffer, really nice looking foam. And let's take a look at that. All right, set our heat gun down. We're gonna let it really get going and we'll show you the difference. All right, here you can see how it's dry. Now, let's see if you can pick this up. Watch this. See that? Look at how the foam went from being dry and porous and matte finish to being much tighter on the surface and glossy and beautiful. And what we'll do is we'll come over here and we'll show you that one more time. Watch what happens when the heat interacts with the foam. Look at that. Wow, beautiful. Watch, we'll do it again on the other side. This is what heat sealing does. It takes your foam from dry. Oh, beautiful, look at that. Wow. Spinning around, look at the difference right there. Just like that. Look at that, look at the difference. There is the unsealed foam right here, and here is the sealed foam. It went from being matte finish to being shinier and tighter. Look at the difference. Very, very nice. And this is going to be the #1, bar none. This is the #1 use you will have for your heat gun, is heat sealing your foam. Really tightens up the surface, glosses it over, and makes it nice and smooth and shiny. And it makes gluing easier, and it makes painting easier. So, heat sealing, the #1 use for your heat gun. Okay, now the second thing that you're going to use your heat gun for, the second most used purpose for your heat gun, is going to be similar. It's still sealing your foam, but it's specifically for sealing your foam after you've grinded it and sanded it, and it is magical. And what I mean is this, is when you have a square edge to your foam and you Dremel the heck out of it. Okay, now the edge of the foam is all tore up and rough. Goes from smooth right here to all tore up. And then what we do, as you've seen in most of our videos, is we'll come in with our sanding sticks, like our 220, and we will stick. And notice how that smoothed it over quite a bit. And then we come in with our 320, and that makes it even smoother. Nice and smooth. But this is totally raw foam. Now, we saw how the heat gun totally tightens up a raw, dry piece of foam when we just need to seal the surface for gluing, but when we are sanding, this thing is the final piece that makes your sanding absolutely flawless. And what I mean is this, is you saw how we tore it up with the Dremel, and then you saw how we hit it with a couple different sanding sticks, and it's pretty raw. That's raw, dry foam. Now watch. Look at that. Holy cow. Beautiful. Look at how it tightened that. Wow, is that smooth. That really tightened that up. Look at that beautiful, smooth, shiny curve we got. And 2 seconds ago, it was raw exposed foam. Gladiator helmet. We just coated this with Plastidip, and it is so beautiful and smooth and very finished looking because we heat sealed it. As we were building the pieces, we heat sealed every piece before we built it together, so that right off the bat, it's nice and smooth and shiny and awesome. And then when we coat it with Plastidip, that also makes the Plastidip layer go down much smoother. So, heat sealing regular foam before you glue, and heat sealing any edges that you've sanded or Dremeled. This pulls it all together and tightens it up super tight. Even though you've gotten it to a good stage with Dremels and then different layers of sanding stick, nothing pulls it together, tightens it all up, glosses it over like blasting it with Venus here. I call it Venus because, man, this sucker is hotter than Venus, I'll tell you what. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is wood. Why are we talking about wood at the same time we talk about our heat gun? Because when you are going to be heating up your foam, heat sealing or heat shaping or anything, you do not want to be using this thing and blasting your foam like this, because this thing is going to melt your cutting mat, and you don't want to have to keep going through cutting mats because they start getting expensive. So what you do is you take a piece of wood, get a big enough piece of wood for the kind of pieces that you're going to be heat sealing, then when you come in and this thing starts roasting and you need to heat seal a piece, you can go right over the top of it like this, and you've got a piece of wood there to absorb all the heat. Just a nice little tip, keep some wood nearby because you're going to want to use wood to protect your cutting mat from being trashed. Okay, now since we have our wood out and we're talking about protecting our cutting mat, what we're going to talk about next is the role the heat gun plays in heat shaping. Now we could have a special episode dedicated to just all of the different ways that you can shape foam, but the only part we want to focus on tonight is the tool that you need to do it is the heat gun. We're going to heat up a piece of foam like so, and you roll the foam up like this. You got to be careful too, because if you go too intense with this thing, you'll melt your foam. So you want to stay close enough to it and long enough on it to heat it up and let it become really soft and pliable, but you don't want to melt it, because when you melt it, it starts bubbling like lava. Now the reason we do this is, check this out. Look at that. But this is a great example of the importance of having a heat gun, because the heat gun is going to allow you to heat curve your foam, and you're going to do that a lot. On probably every build, you're going to have something on it that's going to need a little heat shaping. So there you go. We're going to look at one more example of that. Okay, now once again, this isn't an episode on heat shaping, but this is an episode on the importance of the tool that you need to do some heat shaping. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to get our heat gun going. We're going to start heating this up. All right, we get this over here. All right, now we push this down like so. See that? Foam can be stiff and rigid, and when you heat it up long enough and you're careful not to burn it, you can heat shape foam. And this one is really cool, because after you let it sit in there for a while and you let it cool off and you slip it out, voila, look at that. That's a perfect little dome. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is what the heat gun can do to foam that's been stuck together. Now if you can see the crease right there in the middle, we stuck two pieces of foam together, and that is not coming apart. Look at that. That's not coming apart for anything. Man, that stuff is, woo. Same thing here. We've got this. Now we could tear this and it's going to tear our foam and it's going to tear chunks out, but what we want to talk about is the heat gun's effect on that. Now we talked about heat sealing your foam before you glue so that it handles the glue nicely and that you can attach it together, and once you attach it together, it's smooth and glossy and nice looking. Now, if you make the mistake of gluing all of your pieces together first and then trying to go back over it with this monster and heat seal it, the one thing that can absolutely cause the unbreakable bond between two pieces of contact cement is, that's right, the monster. So check this out. If you come in with your heat gun, look at how we got a seam. Now our prop is wrecked. Look at that. Look at what happens. Ta-da! The heat gun causes contact cement to delaminate and fall apart. That's why after you've assembled your prop, if you have to hit the heat gun on anything, try to cover the seam. If you have to go near a seam, try to cover that seam with another piece of foam or something, but you try to stay away from the seam. Your best bet is do your heat sealing before you build each piece of the prop, because this thing will cause your glue to fall apart. Here's another example. There it is. See that? So, do your heat sealing of your foam before you do your gluing, because this will wreck it. Okay, now one last reminder be careful because this thing is crazy super hot. When you're using this thing and the end of it gets super red hot and you're done using it, move it off to the side and set it well out of your way, because I can't tell you how many times when you're in a hurry, you're working with it and you set it down or you stand it up and you're not paying attention, and then you reach to get something and psss, you burn your arm, which is exactly what I did because I had a lot of debris all over the table. I wasn't keeping my workspace tidy, and I had just turned it off and set it down, and I was reaching around through the mess to get something, and like I said, I burned the heck out of my arm. So respect it, be careful with it, but don't be afraid of it. This thing is totally awesome. It's this piece right here that makes your foam look absolutely beautiful when you're assembling it all together. This thing is a must. So there you go. There's the heat gun. Monster and friend, all in one. Okay, that was a brief look at the heat gun. Scorching foam superstar. You cannot have a cool looking prop without this. We took a look at what it does, how it works. We looked at the main use you're going to have for this, which is sealing your foam. Secondarily, we're going to use it for every time we Dremel or sand, we're going to retighten our foam up after we've created raw foam. So sealing it plain and simple, and tightening it up and sealing it after you've sanded and Dremeled and shaped. Total necessity. And you can pick one of these bad boys up for like 25 bucks or something like that, 30 bucks at Lowe's, Home Depot, any hardware store, and there's plenty of different brands. I just got the Wagner and it's been great. I love it, so I'm sticking with it. It's cool. So that concludes Heat Gun Basics. Hope you liked it. If you did, give us a like, share us with a friend, and subscribe to this channel. And together we're gonna go step by step through a lot more super cool builds so that you get the props you deserve. Thanks for coming. See you next time.